So you knew what my cheeky question was going to be?
I guess it.
Because he repeated, shut
Ken.
up.
Is the mic on? We register?
Remember to register.
Okay. Welcome to everybody. It's a pleasure to have you all here to come to listen to Dr. Susanne Urban on anti-Semitism in Germany in its various manifestations. Before I introduce Susan, a few general remarks. First of all, I once again really have to ask you, please register. We don't know how to set the table if we don't know how many people we have. In fact, we have 21 people registered. There are about 33 people here in the hall, and we would have set up the table. You are all very, very welcome. But really, we need you to register, and if you register, then you can make it to cancel, because otherwise, everybody could have sat comfortably here if we had put it up in rows. A number of things have happened since our last meeting. Of course, the main thing is the OCSE meeting in Berlin, which brought out again the double-facedness of Europe. On the one hand, the OCSE, let's say the roof structures, now are interested to fight anti-Semitism. On the other hand, they do not want to admit the absolute truth, which of course is that Islam in Europe is a major force of anti-Semitism, a major force of racism. That is too much for them to admit. Another positive development, I was told, was that the OCSE, which was supposed to have this as the last conference on anti-Semitism because they have no money, are now planning another one. At the same time, the incidents go on. In France there has been an incident, anti-Semitic incident, almost every day, and the day that there wasn't an incident, that was because the police arrested the people who wanted to put a bomb before a synagogue. Greece, of course, toward the Olympics, is another leader of anti-Semitism. Once again, a cemetery was desecrated. The Israel are Nazi cartoons continue in the Greek mainstream press. The symbol of the Olympics is a man called Nikos Theodorakis, who is a deep anti-Semite, a left-wing composer, who has said that the Jews are the roots of all evil in the world. So Greece is now coming more and more into the focus of all the Jewish organizations as one of the most profoundly anti-Semitic countries of the European Union. I would like to draw your attention that we have published a new P&A, the interview with Daniel Pipes on the end of the golden era of American Jewry. And we always ask other organizations, we encourage other organizations to make their material available to our attendants. And Lawrence Weinbaum, Dr. Lawrence Weinbaum, head of the Institute, head of the research of the Institute of the World Jewish Congress, has brought us copies. You can find them outside in the stand of the P&A or next to it. A journey through Romania's Holocaust narrative, which fits our post-Holocaust interests, and I hope there are enough copies for each of you. If I had known that we would have had so many people, I would have asked him to bring some more copies. Now to our lecture of today. It's a great pleasure to have Dr. Susanne Urban here. She is today she is still with the Frankfurt Jewish Museum. She has published on various subjects of interest to us. One of his is the history of Jews Aliyah, another is various aspects of anti-Semitism, German anti-Semitism, and I'm very glad to announce that she will join the Hebrew University. next September, I believe, as a researcher in German studies. Okay, I think that's it. Susan, wir sind gespannt. We are looking forward.
Thank you for the invitation first. I'm happy to see you all here, even if the room is a little bit overcrowded, but we have agreed that we will not throw those out who are not registered, so you can stay. Is it working? Do you hear me? Is it on? Yeah? Okay. So this lecture will be on German anti-Semitism, and so I will start with a quote of Jean Amery. He has written this in the weekly Die Zeit on July 25th, 1969. And he has written there, I quote, "The classic phenomenon of anti-Semitism is taking a new shape. The old one still exists. And this I name real coexistence. To emphasize, anti-Semitism included in anti-Zionism is again respectable. But a respectable anti-Semitism is not possible." 35 years later, it seems that nothing changed, or that Amery was ahead of his time. But we only have to face another increase of anti-Semitism in Germany. Anti-Semitism did for sure not disappear after World War II. And anti-Zionism is nothing really new. New is the blunt expression of anti-Semitism in Germany and the fraternization between leftists and rightists, liberal and conservative streams. Very briefly, I just want to sketch some surveys on anti-Semitism. And don't get afraid about the length of the lecture, as I will start with the results of an American opinion poll from autumn 1949. We will be in our days in a few moments. In 1949, four years after the war, a quarter of the Western German population portrayed themselves as anti-Semites. And in 1952, a third told in a similar survey that they are for sure anti-Semites. Until 1980, following various examples, anti-Semitism decreased. Since 1989, studies prove in East as well as in West Germany a steady increase. After a huge gap of anti-Semitic attitudes between East and West had to be noticed in the early surveys after 1989, the German East first seemed to be a Jewish Gan Eden with nearly no anti-Semites. But this was a fallacy. First, East Germans were used to tell what was officially correct. And second, anti-Zionism and the attitude towards Israel was not questioned. The gap between East and West was closed swiftly. It seems that Germany's ideological unification bases today on two pillars: on a strong anti-Israeli attitude and on a new standpoint towards history of World War II. For more than 15 years now, intellectuals, writers, politicians and more fractions of German public went step by step beyond moral and political borders which kept a majority nearly for decades from such an open, extensive anti-Semitism. I don't want to list the occurrences and protagonists in detail, but it is obvious that this development didn't start with Martin Walser's speech in 1998, but earlier. And it did not end with the first post-war anti-Semitic election campaign in spring 2002. The Federal Office for the Protecting of the Constitution recorded more than 1,400 anti-Semitic crimes in 2001. This meant, in example, a 100% increase only for Berlin. We have to keep in mind anti-Israeli activities. In example, if it's not an attack against the Israeli embassy or something like this, are not listed in those reports because there is no systematic monitoring of anti-Zionism at the moment. In April 2002, a survey by the Sigmund Freud Institute in Frankfurt am Main and the University of Leipzig proved 20% of the respondents agreed, I quote, that Jews are to blame for the major conflicts in the world. And another 26% share this opinion to a certain extent. In May 2002, Der Spiegel, a weekly political magazine, published a survey by Infratest, and 25% agreed to the statement, I quote, "What the state of Israel does with the Palestinians is nothing else than what the Nazis did during the Third Reich with the Jews." Other studies verify manifest anti-Semitism at around 23%, while hidden anti-Semitism exists in between 30 to 40% of the German public. To sum it up, we speak about 50 to 60% of the German public. Let's look at the last opinion poll for today. The Eurobarometer, published in October 2003, dealt with the relation between the European Union, the Iraq, terrorism, and peace efforts. To extract the most important data, we have to look at question number 10. For each of the following countries, tell me if in your opinion it presents or not a threat to peace in the world. Referring to Israel, 59% of European Union citizens agreed, at top the Netherlands with 74%. In Germany, 65% hold this opinion, 6% above the average. Israel, seen as the largest threat for the world peace, was followed by 3 countries which had to share the second place: Iran, North Korea, and the United States. The Stephen Roth Institute of Contemporary Anti-Semitism and Racism stated some days ago that Germany has, together with France, Great Britain, Russia, and Canada, the highest rates of anti-Semitic incidents in the world. But in comparison with France or Great Britain, in Germany, Arab groups are only in a small percentage involved into anti-Semitic incidents. To say it a bit cynical, Germans depend on themselves being anti-Semitic, they don't need support from others. Anti-Semitism seems to be a vital part of German as well as a European cultural tradition. There was never a time free of anti-Semitism. So it has to be discussed if the current wave is really a new anti-Semitism. I guess it's the for centuries well-known Jew hatred which is modernized if necessary. From time to time it gets a new shape, it is adapted to new situations and surroundings. It's as well above all a post-Auschwitz anti-Semitism. Auschwitz as the symbol for the Holocaust is the obstacle which makes it more difficult for many people to express open anti-Semitism, unless one is not an extreme right-winger, Holocaust denier, and neo-Nazi. For this reason, Germans wear, as many other anti-Semites around the world, the costume labeled anti-Zionist. Then it is suitable declaring Israel as the most evil state and to Nazify Israel through comparisons to the Third Reich. Then it's suitable expressing that the world would look better and more peaceful if Israel would have never been established. Or to express even that Israel shall better vanish from the world's map. Then it is suitable proclaiming Jews as evil people. The manifest anti-Semitism in Germany is as well linked to the German past between 33 and 45, and the growing wish to get rid of the guilt or the responsibility to deal with the past and the Holocaust. Germany can be described on the one hand as a country in which the number of memorial sites, museums in former concentration camps and Jewish museums is, compared to other European countries, huge. Holocaust education in schools and through other educational institutions related to the quantity of material, conferences and workshops seems to be unique in Europe. As Yehuda Bauer, chief historian Yad Vashem, said in an interview to this institution here, Germany is most active in promoting Holocaust education, for which there is a good reason. Given their history, They understand the importance of education as a means of preventing future disasters. The Holocaust today serves as a symbol for what we ought to oppose: racism, genocide, mass murder, ethnic hatred, ethnic cleansing, anti-Semitism, and group hatred. But the mentioned opposition to inhumanity in general is nevertheless no obstacle against German anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. Recent Holocaust education in Germany is done in tense, but most German textbooks depend on clichés and stereotypes. And the topic is taught by teachers who convey on the one hand compassion for the murdered Jews, while on the other hand, many of them express strong reservation towards today's Jewry, not to mention their attitude towards Israel. Germany is proud of its well-developed culture of remembrance and Holocaust education, but well-meant rituals are no effective shields against anti-Semitism and rewriting history. This massive trend of self-victimization in Germany has to be monitored in tense, because this trend will lead, for that I'm sure, to rewriting of World War II history. On the long run, the Holocaust will be only one chapter between others. In the worst case, we will have to face a minimization of the Holocaust. The most important forerunner of those German neo-historians is Jörg Friedrich, who has published 2 books on the Allied bombings of Germany. In Friedrich's publication titled Brandstätten, Burning Sites, by the way, a bestseller listed for weeks and for months, definitely the Germans are depicted as victims. The book contains horrible images from World War II as it reached Germany through Allied bombings. Ruins, burnt bodies, and ashes everywhere evoke similarities to the Warsaw Ghetto after its liquidation, and well-known pictures from Auschwitz and other extermination camps. So Friedrich declares openly in this book, Churchill was the greatest child slaughterer of all time. He slaughtered 76,000 children. But Friedrich does not mention with a line, not in a footnote, never, the 1.5 million Jewish children who vanished in the Holocaust. German history is presented more and more by showing Germans as victims in World War II and not as perpetrators, bystanders, or ordinary people gaining benefit out of the persecution. Based on the new glance at German history, from Allied bombings up to the Germans' expulsion out of today Poland and Eastern European countries, there is undoubtedly a mainstream announcing the Germans were victims. And this perspective on World War II is not taboo-breaking, as many Germans love to assume. A barrier against speaking about Allied bombings or the expulsion never existed. Since the early 1950s, documentaries, books, journals, and films dealt with this topic. It was common to talk about World War II in families, and several organizations were open to those issues too. But it's a new trend that reinterpretation of history stepped out of private homes and the periphery of regular tables. Nowadays, this new perspective is part of the official political schedule too, and it doesn't matter if left or right, intellectual or politicians. Let me give you a few examples. After Martin Walser's speech in 1998, as he told about his tiredness being confronted with Auschwitz, he was backed by numberless Germans, many intellectuals and politicians. Jews were nearly left on their own. 4 years later, the entrance for Walser's opinion unlocked finally, and it was politics which held the key for him. Walser was invited on May 8, 2002, the day marking the liberation, to a discussion with Chancellor Schröder, titled Nation and Patriotism. The dialogue focused on the question whether the Allies of World War I were the real ones to blame that Hitler came to power. And both Chancellor Schröder and Walser stated that patriotism must be built up only on emotions, that it shall root deep down in history. And the German Chancellor stressed then definitely, I quote him, The way as we Germans deal with our history shall be decided by each and every generation anew. The decision is done. On November 9, 2002, the Memorial Day of Crystal Night in 1938, German public television for the first time in years didn't screen the usual quantity of movies and documentaries around the topic. The main news admitted 10 seconds for an historical review, and 2 documentaries were screened around 11 at night, one on Hitler's secretary, the other one on the Jewish Sonderkommando in Auschwitz. But on the other hand, around November 9, the first channel presented a 3-part miniseries on the German general Erwin Rommel and a 6-part series on the SS. The victims were nearly absent. On November 17, 2002, the day of national mourning, dedicated in general to victims of war, German Parliament held a 4-hour ceremony. Tall black crosses were built up in the parliament, and between some classical music pieces, a young woman read letters written by German soldiers in 1942, based in Stalingrad. During the whole ceremony, there was not one word about the war crimes, not one word about army units who slaughtered Jews. Another example. Peter Sloterdijk, a German philosopher born in 1947, stepped out of his academic ivory tower and entered German television. Since 2002, it all happened in 2002, he has his own show in public television, the so-called Philosophical Quartet. He and his companion invite 2 other guests to discuss latest topics. And Sloterdijk is known for his elitist and anti-American attitude, which walks hand in hand with a conservative position towards German past. Sloterdijk's latest book, it's named Airquake, at the Source of Terror, lists vicious events, one after the other, which can be, in Sloterdijk's view, compared. So on the list we have the Holocaust, Allied bombings, atomic bombs on Japan, and September 11. Sloterdijk moreover tries to convince his readers that the source for all those catastrophes was the first gas attack in World War I. This gas attack, underlined by Sloterdijk several times, was made possible above all by German chemist Fritz Haber. And Sloterdijk, with cynical satisfaction, emphasizes quite a lot that Haber was Jewish. Sloterdijk affirms a continuity between Haber's chemical experiments and the mass murder in gas chambers during the Holocaust. So Sloterdijk draws a cynical conclusion. Without a Jewish chemist, there would have been no Holocaust. A Jew has somehow prepared the Holocaust, somehow. Sloterdijk in November 2002 invited to his talk show Luc Bondy, an artistic director of a German theater. The topic, Anti-Semitism. And Bondy told the audience, I quote him, "After World War II, as small children, we were confronted with guilt. This was so massive. We as children in post-war times were nearly non-stop under fire and saw everywhere those pictures. My thesis is, the only possibility to get rid of anti-Semitism is therefore to be anti-Semitic again." And the audience nodded and applauded. One can subsume all those and much more popularized historical reinterpretations under the headline, "Germany is on the track towards self-reconciliation." It's reconciliation between the generations, the gap which opened between the 68er leftists and their fathers, and it is reconciliation between leftists and rightists, so debates on history are not separating Germans any longer. However, the rising lack of interest in the Holocaust does not prevent Germans to use the Holocaust in actual political debates. The alleged lesson Germany and Germans had, in their own words, learned out of World War II and the Holocaust, is expressed as opposition to the United States and Israel and their politics. A huge majority of German public condemns military actions to restrain or detach terror regimes and Islamic fundamentalism, mainly if they are carried out by the United States or Israel. Anti-Americanism and Anti-Zionism as a home for the left was adopted by the mediocre German and backboned by the mentioned books an example on Allied bombings. On the other hand, the extreme right, which normally is identified with xenophobic attitudes, discovered after September 11 its solidarity with Islamic and Palestinian freedom fighters. If leftists or right-wingers, during the anti-war demonstrations in 2003, hundreds of people held banners up or marched behind those which were open pro-Palestinian, anti-American and anti-Semitic. Terrorist movements in Spain, Ireland or even the Hamas are not judged in the same way Israel is condemned. German public does not organize demonstrations after a bus in Israel was blown up, but against the war in Iraq or after a Hamas leader was killed. Israel and therefore the Jews are constantly accused of dreadful immoral behavior, which is, in Germans' perspective, exceedingly bad because they are the former victims. In other words, Israel and the Jews didn't learn their lesson out of the Shoah, whereas the Germans did. Not to be under suspicion of being anti-Semitic, every German attack against Israel is flanked by the mantra, "This is only critics out of a democratic and just position to support peace in and around Israel." The other statement, which is constantly repeated, is that because of the Holocaust, Germans have to side with today's victims, and therefore with Palestinians in general. But the best tactic is without any doubt to quote leftist Jewish and/or Israeli witnesses to underline the own anti-Zionistic opinion. So Jewish witnesses are taken to court against Israel, and we can sum it up: Germany had learned its lesson too roughly. The anti-Israeli and ordinary anti-Zionistic attitude is as well state-of-the-art in parts of the German media. In 2002, one of the first empiric analyses on the images of Israel in German media was done together by a German and an Israeli institute. Based on news reports covering more than 1.5 years, it showed clearly an anti-Israeli trend. We see ruins of Palestinian buildings, distressed women and children in front of them, and on the other side settlers who are living in rich green surroundings. We are seeing the Palestinian child versus an Israeli soldier who is armed up to his teeth. We see the Palestinian David against the Israeli Goliath. Since September 2001, the media perspective has worsened, and not for the Arab world, but for Israel. More than 45% of the news have a clear negative anti-Israeli statement, and 49% are neutral. On the other hand, the image of the Palestinians did get better. Only around 25% of the reports have a negative undertone. Before September 11, it was around 40%, so they gained something out of September 11. Another study done in 2002 by a German institute together with the German branch of the American Jewish Committee showed that German Middle East press coverage is often